Hi there, I'm Cade and this is Crash Course World History, and today we're going to be talking about France. The age of colonization tends to be dominated by England and Spain in the public eye, what with England getting the 13 colonies and Spain converting, Christianizing, or killing everything that they could get their hands on. But France also played a significant role that we mustn't overlook. They ended up with Canada, which I suppose we can overlook, but they also got Louisiana, which ended up in the United States and gave us the gift of these plastic beads. More on that in a minute. So you probably already know that the French had some sort of colonization in North America. It was in Canada, and this land claim became known as New France, first claimed by the explorer Jacques Cartier. He was commissioned by the king to search for the wealthy Asian markets of Asia. However, there were no real territories in the French territory until Samuel de Champlain founded Quebec in 1608. Because of the undesirable climate and no real reason for the French to leave France, there were very few settlers. In fact, it's said that 65% of settlers who went to Quebec ended up returning to France. The French, like most of the countries colonizing the New World, sought to convert the natives to Catholicism. This was the main religion of France then and today. The Jesuits, who were religious missionaries sent by the Roman Catholic Church, sought to convert the natives and were much more successful than the tactics of the Spanish. But now it's time for the open letter. But first, the secret compartment. Let's see what's in it today. Oh, croissants! Buttery. Oh, fur. You were the reason French thought Canada was worth it. Thanks to you, early 17th farmers in Canada were able to switch from boring agriculture to the much more lucrative exotic fur trade. You were also a primary reason for the French going into Canada, where they were much more successful at converting the natives into Christianity than their Spanish counterparts, due primarily to their lack of forced labor projects, which the natives tend to react well to. However, you did cause a series of bloody wars among the Native Americans for control of the fur trade, as well as spreading that pesky old friend disease. But no one ever said fashion was cheap.
Nice.
Because of this friendly relationship between France and the Native Americans, most natives ended up siding with the French against the British in the French and Indian War during the early 17th and 18th centuries. Let's go to the thought bubble. So, what was considered the first colonial war was the French and Indian War, also known as the 7 Years' War. With both countries expanding in North America, there was bound to be a conflict between them eventually. England saw that the lands were rich in the area of the Great Lakes and wanted to control the fur trade. England and France met in Paris to try and reach a peaceful agreement, but could not. During the war, the French and the Native Americans made an alliance and fought against the British. The Native Americans agreed to this because they were afraid that the British would take their land. This is how the war started. Dinwiddie, the governor of Virginia at the time, granted land to the people in the Ohio Valley. He had heard that a French fort was set up near the area and demanded that they leave. He sent young George Washington to deliver a letter which demanded the French to get out. This mission was obviously a failure. The French reacted about the same as bin Laden would have if the Americans asked him to please hand himself over. George Washington later heard that the French were planning an attack and asked permission to strike first. His wish was granted, but he was defeated due to the superiority of the French troops and his lack of experience in battle. Because of Washington's defeat, the French ended up controlling the whole of the Allegheny Mountains. After this battle, England declared war against the French. Throughout the war, the French had the upper hand. They won numerous battles because of their superior number of troops, both French and Native American. In 1756, the French had taken over Fort Oswego, William Henry, and Lake Ontario. However, the tides began to change in 1758. The British began to take charge, and took over the city of Louisbourg, Nova Scotia, and controlled the Bay of St. Lawrence. Constantly throughout, there was a tug-of-war between the two countries, but by the end, the British had taken over most of North America. The French surrendered in the city of Quebec, and about 2.5 years later, the war was officially ended at the signing of the Treaty of Paris. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Despite their good relationship, the French still passed on many deadly diseases that wiped out nearly 30% of the native population. Nothing you can do about that. Economically, the French moved from a farm-based economy to trapping and the fur trade. The trading began in between the French and the natives around Quebec. This became a trading post for furs, as trade expanded along the St. Lawrence River and the Great Lakes, and later along the Mississippi River. Eventually, Russia would join in on the fur trade, and fur would become a national commodity, as well as worldwide. The French who colonized in Canada went out on a limb and decided to name themselves Canadians. This influence is carried out through today, where French is one of the 2 native languages of Canada. Alrighty, let's talk politics. Before France could get around to colonizing anything, they had to first establish their full independence from England. They did this by winning the 100 Years' War. It was actually 116 years, but 100 Years' War sounds more catchy. The vast colonial territories that France set up in the New World were split into things called viceroyalties. Each of these was dictated by a viceroy who delegated their powers to Samuel de Champlain in Quebec. As New France grew, political organization evolved into a constitutional monarchy, which it is currently today. To summarize, France began to colonize the New World in the 16th century, and continued to establish a colonial empire in the Western Hemisphere. French colonies developed an economy based primarily on the fur trade, but fish and sugar trade as well. The French established forts and settlements that would eventually become cities such as Quebec and Montreal. They were one of the most tolerant and forgiving countries to colonize the New World, and would leave their mark in history. That's it for today's show, and thanks from everyone here at Crash Course. This is Cade Stone, Alexa Condos, and others. See you next time.